Hello, it is the day before Anime Riverside. We just finished setting up. It took a few hours just because I haven't vended in several months now. It's gonna be June tomorrow, and I think the last time I vended was in January. This weekend we are vending at Anime Riverside, which is a 2-day event. Typically the nerd bot events like Anime Pasadena, Vegas, Riverside are Saturday, Sunday. I did have a few changes with my booth in adding more identification numbers for some of the products like the pins and stickers since I have a lot of them. I know I have had some issues in the past with some customers not knowing the names of certain anime characters, or they don't really know how to refer to specific designs, so I thought this might be easier for them, and I did update the catalog to reflect that as well. Although I did apply for an artist alley table, I'm actually vending in the vendor hall, and typically for nerdbot events, I know for Anime Pasadena in the past and for Las Vegas, I did get a vendor hall space. And to be honest, they're pretty similar to Artist Alley in that whether you're in vendor hall or Artist Alley, you are given an 8-foot table. I believe for vendors, you are allowed to have more space behind you, but I feel like they're pretty much the same for Artist Alley and vendor hall. It's just that for vendor hall, you're more likely to come across like Funko Pops or resellers versus Artist Alley. They're most likely going to be artists. I don't have too many expectations for this event in particular because I usually do okay at nerdbot events. I know when I did Anime Riverside the first year, which was 2 years ago, I did decently well, and even for a 2-day event, and at the time I didn't have my Ita bag, so I think my most expensive items were my enamel pins. I did decently well, so I'm curious to see how this year goes. I did not go last year because at the time it was coinciding with Fanime and I was at Fanime. So this is how the current table display looks for a 8-foot table. So I do have the Ita bags up here. I did put some of them on sale, so like this red Ita bag as well as this lavender Ita bag is on sale, which is why I put the sale sign. However, I also forgot to make a separate sign for these. For Ita wallets, again, I have the catalog up here. This is the updated catalog. So right now it has identification numbers on pins and some of the stickers as well, so it's on there. I forgot to bring some of these designs for the stickers. However, I know I will have them by Anime Expo, so that's why they're on there, and these are kind of expensive to make because I have them printed at a supply store, so I just wanted to have it available so that it can be used for AX and Otakon. Quarter bags are up here. Again, I did update the signage for the magnets, so they do have these little icons, as well as this not part of deal sign, so people know that this isn't part of the 3 for $15 deal. I forgot my business card holder, so I did have to spread them out here, but if they do want one and we're out of these, they can just ask me. I did include a cash policy, so I did notice this from another artist display from one of my artist alley review videos, and I did like that idea, so thank you for the idea. So basically, just to reduce counterfeit bills, I did include a cash policy, so for if you do want to pay with a $100 bill, I didn't want to outright not allow them to use it because I know some people would rather just use it. So they do need to make a $60 minimum purchase for that. If they want to use a $50 bill, they would need to spend a minimum $30. I did include mystery pin bags, so all of these are just one piece really, but usually if they buy more than one bag from the same anime, it will have a duplicate since I did have more of like certain pin designs, but I did note that on there. Each mystery pin bag has 3 B-grade pins, and it's about like $20 for each bag. I have the mirror per usual. Same thing, these are the same stickers as before. I think I'm just gonna have them for about a year, and then from there I'll decide if I want to change them or not. Stickers have been updated with the little identification numbers. I did update the pin rigid board, so as you can see, I did add the little icons so you can identify the different pin designs. So if you don't know who Law is, or let's say a friend of yours knew that I was going to be here and they wanted this pin, but you don't know his name, you can just say, I want pin 1P, and we should know who you're referring to. And then I did add the prices in as well, so these have been laminated and printed out, so they're not like the ones that I wrote before. I also did include the pin deals onto the rigid board itself, so it does reduce the need for an actual sign in case I don't have space. Like in this case, I don't know where I would put it unless it was here, but it would interfere with this part. I also did add that these are filler pin sets because I did encounter some confusion with some people thinking that the $20 was for one of these pins. No, it's for all of these pins altogether. Same thing here. I think for this part, because I was running out of space and I didn't want to move one of the Jujutsu Kaisen pins to another pin board, I just included the two different Getos on here. They are under the same identification number, but I'll just ask them if they want the stitches or no stitches Geto. This is the first con where I will have the egghead one-piece pins, so they're up here. I think that's everything. That's the entire table display. Hello, it is day one of Anime Riverside. We got here around 8. It was like a little bit before 8 just to set everything up, and while it's not as stressful. I think when we got here, there was already a line wrapping around towards the vendor dock. Usually there's like a long line, and that's because most of them do want to get dibs for voice actor signings. If you're not familiar with the NerdBot events, even though there's an artist alley and there's a dedicated vendor hall, these events are mostly geared towards normie anime fans or people who probably watched some anime growing up and are usually more towards mainstream anime. And a lot of them tend to be the type of attendees who bring along Funko Pops with them and go to voice actor signings and panels. While I do tend to do decently well at these events, I know it's not usually like my best ones, and that's because, again, most of the focus is towards the voice actors and the guests, and sometimes we're kind of an afterthought because voice actors do charge for their autographs. I think the cheapest that I've seen is like $20, but a lot of them tend to range around $40 to even $60 depending on the voice actor. So I'm curious to see how this weekend will go, but I feel like it'll be good. Also, my headband this time is of Tanjiro and his crow. I got it from Universal Studios Japan. This is how the display looks in the back. My sister's just restocking the sweaters. It's a little messy. I'm still trying to figure out how to configure all of this. At least we have all of this space, because again, 8-foot table. We do have some space in the back, so at least we don't have to worry about needing to make room in the back, because I know usually for most conventions you do have to have space in the back so then people can walk through, but because we do have this type of barrier, we don't really have to worry about that, so that's kind of nice. I also really like how our neighboring vendor does have like this wall, so I feel like we have a little bit more privacy, because if they were an open table on our right, we'd basically be visible, but it's kind of nice having this type of seclusion. So it's now 10:57, a little less than an hour since this event started, and to be honest, it's actually doing decently well, at least from what, again, no expectations, but from what I expected. I think we've had about 8 sales or so, and most of them were decently big purchases, but I think that's because a lot of them were anticipating my new egghead pins, so they did know me beforehand, or at least with social media. So it's 12:15, a little less than 7 hours until this con ends. It has slowed down a little bit. There was a bit of a rush about 30 minutes to an hour when it opened, but now that it's 12, it's kind of slowed down. We have been running out of the business cards where we wrote the table numbers. I like to write the table numbers on the business cards at least for the first 50 or so, especially for the first day of a convention. Well, since most people do tend to walk around the first few hours of a con, if they decide to purchase later on, they may come back. So by having my table number on the business card, it would be easier for them to find me, especially if they don't have social media. I usually just write it on the top. Sometimes I write the convention name. So for AX, for example, I would write AX Artist Alley G62. In this case, Anime Riverside is too long of a name for me to write on the business cards. I usually don't do that on all of the business cards because then I can't use that after the con, and I don't typically run out of business cards. Try to allocate a few of them. It's now 1:10 and the internet here is pretty bad. I don't recall it being this bad of a connection when I vended here 2 years ago. However, I was vending in Artist Alley last time, and basically how Anime Riverside is, the Artist Alley and the vendor hall is in separate hallways. So I don't know how it is going on that side of the convention. However, here, my internet is really bad. I do use Verizon, and typically I don't have an issue with Verizon. However, I think the other mobile carriers are fine. So I am currently using my sister's hotspot, but otherwise the Square Reader is just not going to work. I'll also advise that if you do drive into Anime Riverside, according to the Artist Alley Discord, the parking prices is actually pretty bad. I personally haven't seen it, so I don't know how much it has been when I first came in. I did come in before 8 a.m., so there was plenty of free parking that was within walking distance. However, if you do park close to the convention center, there are some parking lots, so you do have to pay. I don't know how much. Apparently, if you park at the Marriott, which is across from the convention, I think it was supposed to be $32, or initially it was $32, but apparently some people have seen it go up to $70, which is pretty ridiculous. That's even more than Anime Expo. Anime Expo is around $30. So if you are a vendor or even an attendee, I do recommend coming in early because there is plenty of free parking a few blocks away from the Riverside Convention Center, and there's really no need to pay that much. So it's now around 2 p.m. and it's relatively busy, especially for a Saturday. I'm trying to remember if it was like this 2 years ago. However, I feel like the sales have been a little bit slow. Like there's a good amount of sales for a Saturday, and especially for these types of events. But I feel like a lot of them were from social media or from people who have purchased from me when I was at Anime Riverside 2 years ago. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, because there were some times where my eyes were watering a little bit because I was just very grateful for all of you and very happy, especially if you are from social media or you watch my YouTube videos. I really appreciate you, and I say that every single time, but thank you so much. It is very crowded right now inside the vendor hall. Again, I'm not really sure how it is with Artist Alley. I will talk to a few artist friends just to see how that is tomorrow. However, right now it's very packed and people are moving very slowly, which probably helps with sales too, because they are forced to see everything very slowly. But in terms of sales, not very many transactions, but the transactions tend to be a little bit bigger, such as a lot of people purchasing the 3 for $40 deal for pins. However, I am a little bit surprised that there weren't that many sales on corduroy bags yet. No sweaters yet, but it is pretty warm this weekend. But for the most part, sales have been primarily focused on enamel pins and stickers. It's currently 3:43, so con ends in like 3 or so hours. It slowed down a little bit, at least compared to when the con just opened. I think there was a good amount of people up until 2 p.m. or so. And now if you walk around the vendor hall, it's not as crowded as it was before. So it has slowed down a little bit. Even in terms of looking at the number of transactions, it's a smaller amount than from previous conventions. However, I feel like a lot of the transactions have been bigger purchases, so I feel like that kind of evens it out. However, I haven't checked the actual numbers, at least on my square. So it is 6:32. I'm exhausted, and I think it's just because I am not used to being in a very overstimulating environment. I did take a nap earlier today. I think it was probably like 30 minutes or so. Also, I didn't realize how cold this convention could be. From what I remember 2 years ago, I think it got pretty warm. Again, I was in Artist Alley, and I don't remember if they just didn't turn on the AC or if the AC was broken at the time, or there was just so many people. But here in Vendor Hall, even though it was very congested, it's freezing. And I think there is an AC vent above us, so that's why it's incredibly cold. But luckily I did bring my sweater, so this is one of the samples of my new sweater coming soon. I think I'll do pre-orders. I don't know if I'm doing one this month or in July, depending on my workload, but this one's coming soon, and it's one of the new designs because currently I have the pink, green, and brown. Overall today, I think numbers-wise, it's on the good/not too bad side. It's kind of hard for me to tell because it kind of feels like a lot of the transactions were with cash. When I did look at my card transactions on the Square terminal, it did hit my baseline of what I would be happy with to make in one single day. So I'm pretty sure I'd be pretty satisfied with the numbers for today. I'm curious as how tomorrow will go because I was talking to a few other vendors. To them, this event was also pretty okay, but they did do conventions like MomoCon, I think last weekend. So of course you can't really compare Anime Riverside and MomoCon, which is a pretty decently good con. But overall I'm pretty satisfied, and I'm curious to see how tomorrow will go. Hello, it is day 2 and the last day of Anime Riverside. Looking back at yesterday's numbers, surprisingly, it was actually really good because when I was comparing my one-day numbers to some of my better local cons like Anime LA or Anime Impulse LA, yesterday was better than any of my one days from those events. Even though during the event yesterday, it kind of felt it was okay because there was a little bit of a rush from 11 to 1 o'clock, but after that, the traffic was not as congested during those times. There was a lot of people flowing through the aisles, however, most of them were just browsing or they weren't really shopping. And most of the transactions from yesterday kind of felt like they were from social media because I did have a shop update, I believe a few weeks ago. I don't know if it was last week or just a couple weeks ago with the new Egghead one-piece pins. So I'm assuming that a lot of the people who did shop for me decided to shop in person since I'll be at this event versus having to pay shipping and tax online. Surprisingly, we also got a lot of corduroy bag sales, which I wasn't expecting. I did get confused at first because no one was buying any of the corduroy bags within the first few hours. So I was like, did I bring too many? Because I brought an entire IKEA bag. So I think it was about like 4 to 5 of each corduroy bag design because I know they did pretty well at Anime Impulse LA in January. But this time, I think we sold out of all of them yesterday. So then I had to go back to pick some more up. But all in all, I feel like most people bought the bigger items because I can only name maybe like a handful of people who only bought stickers or car magnets, surprisingly. Because usually for these types of events, I get more smaller purchases. And besides the shop update, I think a lot of people bought for me because I haven't been to a con since January. I know there are a few people too who said they would see me at Anime Expo, but they decided to purchase from me today or yesterday, which also makes more sense, especially since AX is very hectic and busy. If you're gonna see that person at this convention, you might as well buy from them if you don't really care about the potential stamp rallies that they might have at AX. Some information about Anime Riverside. This is a 2-day convention, typically, as mentioned previously. A lot, if not every single NerdBot convention, Anime Pasadena, Anime Riverside, Anime Las Vegas, they are all 2 days long. Hours for this particular con is from 10 to 7 on Saturday and 10 to 6 on Sunday. Personally, I feel like 10 to 7 is a tad bit too long. 10 to 6 is kind of long anyway, but that's typical con alley hours. The convention for artist alley and vendors does open at 7 in the morning for you to come in through the loading dock. What I do like about this convention is that there is free parking if you're here early enough, because I remember 2 years ago, I think I got here probably an hour prior to 10 a.m. and all of the free parking in the surrounding area was gone. So I did have to pay for parking at that point. But if you're here early enough, there will be free parking in the residential area. And also just be sure to look at the signs because it is a little bit confusing and you don't want to get ticketed. I'm not entirely sure how much artist alley tables were. However, for vendor hall, I did pay $520, which is pretty pricey if you compare it to, let's say, a con like Anime Expo. I think I paid like around $600, and that's a 4-day convention, and it comes with a second badge. This particular con, 2 days, it does come with a second badge, and then if you want an additional badge, I believe it's $25. But at the same time, you do have to realize that a lot of convention prices are going up. Am I happy about it? No, but that's also, what am I going to do about it? I don't know if this was late of last year, but I did update my acrylic badge. So if you follow me on social media, you do know that I heavily promote having some type of I'm the artist badge. So this is one example. I did get the type that clips and also has this safety pin because I did initially have a magnet. However, I think it's more so of a problem with me because I kept knocking it off. I did get this option, and I like this one because it says, "Hi, I'm the artist," and it also has my logo. And then for my friends who do help me, it says, "Hi, I'm the helper," just because I have experienced some situations where it would be nice if they knew whether I was the artist or if they were the helper, but because there have been some times where a lot of people do mistake my friends for myself. So I just thought this would be easier, just so they know that I did design everything and it's not like it's been drop shipped. It's currently 1:21. It feels a little bit slower than yesterday. I think most of the people who wanted to buy from my booth probably purchased yesterday, and I wasn't really paying attention to their badges, but I did notice most of them only had Saturday only badges yesterday. I don't recall anyone having weekend badges, but I feel like it's been kind of slow, at least on the vendor hall aspect. But when I did step outside, there was a good number of people lounging around outside because the weather is pretty nice. It wasn't too warm, but it was also gloomy, so it wasn't blinding sun. So maybe most people are just going to panels or autographs first, and then maybe people will start coming in. It's now 4:13. Looking forward to this con ending because I'm just tired. I really do think I'm not used to it. I was talking to my sister about this, and that I feel like I'm pretty overstimulated, and this con isn't even that busy, so it was a good warm-up con, at least before AX next month. I was counting the number of transactions, and I would say it's a little more than half of yesterday's, which typically that's pretty much the pattern for me. Saturday tends to be the most busy, and then either if there was a Friday or Sunday, I would say it's usually a little bit more than half of the number of transactions. We did get a few big transactions because we are pretty much halfway through the restock of our tote bags, and usually you can get a free tote bag with a $50 or higher purchase. So overall, I feel like we've been doing pretty well. Even with all of the numbers so far, I still believe that this con is only good if you're local or if you're at least just driving in. I wouldn't recommend it if you're flying in, especially if you're new. I don't think this is the con for you if you do have to spend a lot of money just to be here, because these events tend to be a little unpredictable. I was talking to another vendor friend, and she did vend Anime Pasadena this past year. I was not here this past year, and she said that Riverside was a lot better for her than Pasadena, so it really just depends. I would have thought that Pasadena is the best one because it is the main one. It was original NerdBot event before they branched out to Riverside and Las Vegas. But overall, if you didn't listen to my entire spiel, just do this event if you're local, or you can keep costs very low. Looking back on it, I would do this event again. I feel like a lot of the people who purchase from me have seen me in past events or follow me on social media, and it would be nice to be at a convention where they would expect to see me, so I would keep this on my con roster. It is now 5:08, so a little less than an hour until this convention ends. Overall, it's been pretty good. There hasn't been any major changes since the last check-in. I will say I will be posting my full, I wouldn't say uncensored review, but my full review of this event on Patreon. So if you do want to subscribe to my Patreon, I will have it linked down below. I will be posting that review on the Biz Buddies tier, so feel free to check it out. If you watch the vlogs or any of my videos, I really appreciate when you do stop by, because sometimes I forget that people actually watch the videos. I'm just grateful that it is helping all of you a lot, especially when you're vending, so I appreciate it when you do tell me that they are very helpful. If you want to see how I did at a 3-day convention where I was in 2 stamp rallies, watch this vlog where I was vending at Anime Impulse LA. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.